Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. This is the weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. Today is July 3rd. We'll be covering most recent cutting-edge trends that our threat intelligence team is witnessing in the trenches. My name is Keith Wojciech, the Global Head of Threat Intelligence. This week, we're joined by Vice President Dave Truman, Vice President Shnagar, Senior Associate Ryan Hicks from our Threat Intelligence team. We're covering the following trends our team is concentrating on this week: the critical FortiNAC vulnerability, the delivery of BUMBLEBEE and ICEDID, Mockingjay process injection, not to be confused with the Hunger Games, the targeting of IoT and Linux devices, and a MOVEit update from Ryan. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Ryan.
Thanks, Keith. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so to start with, covering FortiNAC vulnerability. So last week, FortiGuard Labs released an advisory, which is for a remote code execution vulnerability under CVE 2023 33299. The advisory states that an unauthenticated attacker could exploit this vulnerability through crafted requests to TCP port 1050 on FortiNAC devices. As you can see from the left, it's a CVSS score of 9.6, making it critical, and those are the relevant patches there to apply, and the affected products are listed on the right-hand table there. Currently, there's no proof of concept or exploitation observed in the wild. However, based on recent Fortinet vulnerabilities in particular, researchers and threat actors are often quick to develop kind of proof of concepts or exploits to these kind of vulnerabilities. We therefore expect a proof of concept at the very least to be released soon, so we keep an eye on that, and we'll release further information as necessary. I mentioned before that vulnerability would target port 1050, so it's worth noting here that according to the documentation for FortiNAC, this port is used for Common Object Request Broker Architecture Management, and that's for accessing server objects, and inter-process communication, so kind of internal use by FortiNAC and its sort of subsystems. And this therefore really should only be accessed by internal services and not exposed to the internet, where this vulnerability would potentially be most impactful. The image you see on the bottom there is a showdown search for FortiNAC devices with port 1050 open. And out of the 11,000 FortiNAC devices, only 10 you see here have port 40 open, so widely reducing the potential widespread attack surface for this vulnerability. The recommendation here at this time is to, of course, patch and not expose 1050 to the internet for FortiNAC devices, where this will be potentially the most dangerous if that were the case. So just moving on to the next story. So there have been reports in open source of a new JavaScript-based dropper called PindOS, and that was observed delivering BUMBLEBEE and ICEDID. We often observe frequent changes to the delivery methods of both these malware families, and quite a lot of common overlaps between the two. Most recently, in late, or a number of examples of compressed files such as sort of .zip, .iso, .vhd, and LNK files used alongside PowerShell scripts to deliver both BUMBLEBEE and ICEDID, the DLLs, to the victim. And these latest reports have identified that a small JavaScript file attempts to download these kind of DLLs from a primary URL, and it also has a secondary URL kind of built in as a fallback. It then executes the downloaded payload from the user's app data folder via run DLL32. And the name of the dropper itself comes from the user agent string PindOS, which you can see at the bottom there in a packet capture of activity. And this user agent has the potential to be used in perhaps network-based detections or threat hunting as well, if kind of the relevant logging and potential perhaps sort of traffic inspection is available. From reporting, it wasn't clear how the initial JavaScript file kind of landed on the victim. However, it's likely to have occurred through phishing emails, and this is because the JavaScript, one example, it was named, it very much looked like it was mimicking an invoice file, which is very common for phishing laws. And just to note that both Bumblebee and ICEDID have been observed previously, leading to ransomware compromises like Quantum Locker, Black Cat, and Conti. Therefore, understanding these kind of changes and how these kind of initial malware is being delivered and pulled from adversary infrastructure is quite important to kind of detecting and containing a ransomware attack early on in the kill chain. And IOCs for this these campaigns and these new kind of variations of delivery mechanisms have been added to the crawl IOC feed. For now, I'll hand back to Keith.
Thank you, Ryan. Really do appreciate that. We're going to turn over to Dave to talk about the Mockingjay process injection. Dave?
Yep, thank you. Researchers from Israel-based cybersecurity company Security Joes have documented a new technique for process injection, which they say is not detected by many EDR solutions. The technique relies on finding a DLL that has a section with read, write, and executable set, and then using this to execute code. The method involves the actor writing a custom executable that starts a legitimate child process that uses that vulnerable DLL. Once the DLL is loaded by the child process, the custom parent process overwrites the writable executable section. The injected code is then triggered when the legitimate process tries to call the code that was originally there. This method has limitations. The DLL files with memory sections set to read, write, and execute appear to be rare based upon the researchers' own search results. The only one they confirmed they found was buried deep inside Visual Studio and would not be present on most Windows installs. The remote injection can only be targeted at an executable that would normally run that DLL, and the target executable must be a child process of their custom malicious executable. These limitations make this technique more situational than other ways of hiding process injection, and it is more likely that if this technique is used by actors, it will be under specific circumstances rather than as a generic technique. Of further note, whilst writing to a read-write section of a DLL loaded by a child process is not currently being flagged as malicious behavior by EDRs, it doesn't mean that EDR software does not have the capability of monitoring any Windows API calls that are used to achieve this. So non-detection may be short-lived. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate that. Now we're going to hand it over to Mukesh to talk about the targeting of IoT and Linux devices. Mukesh?
Thank you, Keith. So cryptojacking, the unauthorized use of computer resources for mining cryptocurrency, has become an increasingly prevalent in recent years. We've observed a concerning trend where threat actors are exploiting vulnerabilities in systems open to the internet, including IoT devices. In a previous threat intelligence brief that we covered on June 26, 2023, we mentioned an unnamed threat actor distributing malware onto servers by brute forcing SSH passwords. Well, it seems that threat actors have also set their sights on IoT devices as well, leveraging custom and open source tools to compromise them and install crypto mining malware. Threat actors initiate the attack by attempting to brute force credentials on misconfigured Linux devices that are accessible via the internet with port 22 open. Once the device is compromised, they swiftly disable this shell history and proceed to download a compromised version of OpenSSH. This compromised version is called OpenSSH-8.0 p1.ggz from a remote controlled server that they own. This package contains both the legitimate code for OpenSSH as well as malicious files, including a shell script called inst, that's inst.sh, and a backdoor binary designed for various devices architectures. Microsoft researchers who delved deeper into the attack discovered that these actors leveraged an established criminal infrastructure. Interestingly, they utilized a South Asian financial institution's subdomain to be used as a command and control C2 server. The backdoor installed on the devices deployed rootkits and an internet relay chatbot. effectively stealing devices' resources for their mining operations. This attack does display a high level of complexity as well as evasive techniques employed by the threat actor. The backdoor, once installed, also ran secondary payloads named as Ziggy Startux, which is an IRC bot equipped with distributing denial of service. To ensure persistence, the bot binary was copied to multiple locations, accompanied by the creation of con jobs and its registration as systemd services. Communication through IRC channels, the bot received instructions from C2 servers to download additional scripts, including tools for scanning SSH access and package containing mining malware. In conclusion, this type of targeted attack on Linux-based systems and IoT devices does show light on the escalating threats posed by cryptojacking, as well as threat actors increasingly adapting and creating sophisticated techniques to infiltrate and control exposed devices. In order to mitigate these such attacks, it is crucial that administrators implement robust security measures. This includes stronger access controls, regulate patching to address vulnerabilities, proactive monitoring, as well as good system and network hygiene. With that, I'll hand over back to Keith. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Makash. Appreciate that. Now we're going to wrap it up here with Ryan and talk about a MOVEit update. Ryan?
Thank you. Yeah, just to kind of round things up, just a quick update on MOVEit victims that have been reported in open source recently. And this just really primarily just shows that kind of MOVEit compromises are certainly very alive today. So 3 new victims from Klopp's exploitation of the zero-day vulnerability in MOVEit have been announced recently. Siemens Electric is one of those as another victim of the leak site. With company officials confirming their systems have been breached, Schneider Electric as well. And then lastly, the head of New York City's Department of Education publicly announced that they had also been a victim. And just to summarize what we've kind of been monitoring recently, as of last week, June 29th, we've observed 89 MOVEit victims in total appearing on Klopp's leak site. 6 of those had been removed, and of the remaining 83 listings, 40, so just under half, currently contain partial or full data publications. So yeah, we kind of initially saw just names being listed, but now certainly a lot of data for just under kind of half really of the published victims have been put out there. So yeah, just to give that quick update. Of course, we'll continue to update with anything further we find in the next upcoming weeks. And that's all for me. Back to Keith.
Thanks, Ryan. Dave, I really appreciate all the updates you had today. A big thank you to everybody that has taken the time to tune in to today's weekly threat intelligence briefing. We do hope that you found this session informative. Enjoy the rest of your day and make sure you tune into next week. Thank you very much, everyone. And those in the US, happy 4th of July.